because it's just a thing of the willpower.
Senate screens 10 out of 43 ministerial nominees. Screening of others continues today.
Chief Justice of Nigeria pledges total support of the judiciary in the fight against corruption.
Any case that has to do with the allegation of corruption, we speed it up so that if somebody requests to go to jail, he'll go to jail.
And House of Reps to investigate alleged abscondment of soldiers with cash.
It will be dangerous to leave this very grave incident unattended to.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the ministerial nominees and the task ahead.
All right, we now know that a new federal cabinet will soon emerge. And of course, that indication to that effect was seen yesterday when the National Assembly began screening of ministerial nominees of President Muhammadu Buhari.
That's right. Now, 10 of the ministerial nominees have already been screened, and the Senate, which is charged with, of course, ratifying those nominations, will resume the exercise at 11 o'clock later this morning with the hope of screening many more nominees. Indeed,
and of course, since the names of the nominees, was made public, Nigerians have been reacting, and of course we have 43 ministerial nominees to the National Assembly, and many of the reactions express optimism that the imminent constitution of a new federal cabinet will soon set the business of governors into accelerated action.
That's right, Clay. And from the list of the nominees, there's an expectation of an expanded federal cabinet, with some of the states having what has been described as a privilege of 2 ministerial slots in the next Federal Executive Council.
All right, Kingsley, the right word there indeed, it's privilege, because there are states, of course, which do not have 2 nominees, and that should be a pointer to the high hopes and expectations Nigerians, of course, have expressed from the new ministers when they are eventually confirmed and assigned their respective portfolios.
That's right. Now, great expectations indeed. And by the way, the fact that some of the states have 2 nominees is a pointer to the essence of the application of the geopolitical zone principle, by which you pick another nominee from each of the 6 geopolitical zones plus the 36 states of the Federation. But already the APC-led federal administration has indicated its willingness to drive the process of taking 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years, as was stated by President Muhammadu Buhari in his June 12 Democracy Day speech. And therefore, the burden of formulation and execution of enabling policies and programs would lie on the new set of ministers who are expected, of course, to get on with the business of the next level.
And indeed, Kingsley, we have 12 former returning ministers, that's what we call them, and it's expected that these are, of course, nominees who are already conversant, of course, with, the next level agenda of Mr. President. And as far as this list is concerned, some Nigerians, of course, have also made observations about women representation among the number. Considering the popular advocacy for 35% affirmative action for women, well, there are 7 of them.
Well, that's right. 7 of them who are on the list. And the expectation is, of course, that there could be other assignments that Mr. President, would give to women in the course of running his administration. And the hope is that certainly there will be more engagement for women, and that those who have already been nominated, the 7 to whom you referred, will indeed skate through the screening process, and that Nigerians are waiting to see the conclusion of exercise so that the government settles down to full business. But one question to ask is, what is the pedigree of the ministerial nominees, particularly those who are not returning ministers, as it were? And can we also speculate on who might get what portfolio? And what will the ministries, once they are either unbundled, hold in terms of the potential for economic diversification? In particular, what is the task that lies ahead of the new federal cabinet?
We have so many questions. Nigerians have so many questions to ask, especially with the about 31 Kingsley, nominees who probably will be, coming on new. We have 12, of course, returning members who are already familiar with the various portfolios. So we will be asking a lot of questions on today's, of course, edition of the program. We'll have our guests, as always, experts in their field, who will be providing us, of course, with insights into what we should expect. So that's the outlook of today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. And as always, wherever you're watching from, within and outside the country, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I am Claire Adilabo Abdulrazak, and we're transmitting live on the network service of Africa's largest TV network, the NTA.
My name is Kingsley Osagolo. I join my colleague Claire and also welcome you to this edition of the program. It's another wet morning here in Nigeria's capital territory. And of course, in the course of the program, we'll have our regular complimentary segments. And these include newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's take the highlights of the morning news. And here is Chimobi Watanaji. Hello, Chimobi.
Hello, Kingsley and Claire. Good morning. And good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. The Senate yesterday commenced screening of ministerial nominees as requested by President Muhammadu Buhari. The Senate at Wednesday's plenary screened 10 nominees, including some former ministers and former legislators appointed ministers.
What we tend to do when we are doing mass housing is to do one size fits all. And that's why it has not worked. Just like the distinguished senator said, there are some houses that we inherited as administration, despite the deficit.
I agree with you that the situation of primary education is very, very bad. But what should be done is perhaps the Riot Act should be read to states.
I think the president had made a very good choice.
And now to the judiciary, where Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad has been sworn in as substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria. And this follows the Senate confirmation of his nomination by President Muhammadu Buhari, who also presided over the swearing-in ceremony. The new CJN promised that the nation's judiciary under his watch will stand to be counted in the renewed fight against corruption for national growth and development.
The judiciary under my watch, Inshallah al-Karim, will be better. Any case that has to do with the allegation of corruption, we speed it up so that if somebody requests to go to jail, he'll go to jail. I will ask you people and any other person who knows about it, please let him write to me or let him have contact with me.
And in the meantime, for the first time since the Code of Conduct for the Public Officers was introduced into the 1979 Constitution by the military, an attempt is being made to review the Code of Conduct Tribunal and Code of Conduct Bureau Acts. A national workshop to begin the formation of the Act is in progress in Abuja.
We have learned from the recent experience, and we need to strengthen our system for the protection of democracy, which exists for the protection of all of us.
It's a long process. It will end up in the National Assembly, but we as citizens have to start it, and it's desirable.
In other news, in a bid to ensure that the next level agenda takes Nigeria to greater heights and positively impact the people, the federal government has assembled key players in the public and private sectors of the economy, as well as development partners, to chart the best way forward.
We are committed to consolidating the successes of the first term and creating an avenue such that the nation's investments and resources are geared towards sustainable development. This policy dialogue session has been conceived to advise the government over the next 4 years to deliver on our promises in a manner that reflects true changes to the livelihood of our people.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated the new British Prime Minister Boris Johnson while felicitating with Theresa May for providing visionary leadership for the country. The president expressed confidence that the new Prime Minister will do likewise and sustain the relationship between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. The president hailed the British democratic model, describing it as one of the oldest and most successful systems in the world. And now to other stories. The House of Representatives has resolved to set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the circumstances surrounding the alleged abscondment of 5 Nigerian soldiers of Operation Harbin Kunama 3. The soldiers based in Sokoto were detailed to escort a VIP with an undisclosed but huge amount of cash from Sokoto to Kaduna State on 11th of this month.
It will be dangerous to leave this very grave incident unattended to and imminent to unravel the circumstances surrounding it.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
And against the backdrop of recent violent protests and backed upon by members of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, the Abuja Municipal Area Council administration has alerted traditional leaders in the council to be vigilant and promptly report strange movements within their domain.
It is in the news that in some of these communities you will find 9, 10, 12 people in a room. That is very unusual. So you don't need to be told that who are these characters that on getting information, they swoop into the town and do what they need, what they wanted to do.
We go back to our various communities to keep watch, to talk to our people. It is our duty to function on government policies.
Now, the National Orientation Agency has engaged critical stakeholders in a dialogue to provide a platform for citizens' input in policy formation, the National Livestock Transformation Plan, and the need for peaceful coexistence dominated discussions.
The suspension of the Ruga or NLTP project has brought a lot of misunderstanding in the country. And of course, we are saying that such important national public policy must not be allowed to constitute a security threat.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Claire just after the break. Do stay with us.
Sir.
All right, thank you for joining us. If you've just tuned in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. Time for some business stories now. And we hear advocacy for African countries to develop value chains for their raw materials is trending. And Kolo Mohammed has details of that and other business news.
Good morning. Nice to have you join us on Business News. Value addition is a driving force in the shift to offering hybrid value-added services, moving from simple transactions to long-term value relationships. Africa majorly exports raw materials and largely imports finished goods that come with premium-laden value addition.
If we look at Africa as a continent, we import more finished goods and export raw material. Now, by the time value is added to those raw materials and imported back to us, we pay a premium. Now, if you look at our trade within Africa, I did read some figures, and it says we basically trade about 15% within Africa, and we import in value 85% from the Western world, be it Europe, America, or Asia. And basically, I think what our focus should be is that we should trade between ourselves within the African continent. We have a very large population that can form a very good market.
Simply put, moving from selling products to selling the solutions or outcomes the products provide. The absence of jobs, entrepreneurial disposition, and trade-friendly environment is what the slow pace of trade and business development in Africa is premised upon.
We have all the ability and the capacity to train and resettle young men and women that are unemployed.
Time now to let us see where medical activities on the floor of the stock market placed market indices. That's business news at this time. See you again soon.
All right, thank you very much, Kolo Mohammed, for that business package. Newspaper review is next for us on the program.
All right, if you're in Abuja, it's raining cats and dogs. We've just had a report of that. Bayo just confirmed. By the way, Bayo is here. Bayo, good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kingsley. I heard you say it's raining cat and dogs. No, I think the best description for this morning's rain is raining grass cutters and antelopes. Leave elephants and hippos for Warri, Port Harcourt, and Lagos. Okay. Wow, it's heavy this morning.
It's heavy.
Yes,
Wow.
I got drenched.
Wow.
But it's blessing
Yeah.
from above.
Yeah, I'm sure that also has affected, of course, the vendors, newspaper vendors.
Yes.
Yes, because our newspaper is very slow this morning.
Yes, newspapers are not immune to rainfall, and vendors will be careful.
Of course, of course. All right, let's begin with the Daily Sun. It has quite a splash of stories, but of course, for this paper, what's trending as headline, 2019 elections fallout, Buhari Atiku fight over US visa ban, and a number of riders there. But of course, just by the side of the nameplate there, the earpiece, you'll find Senate screens Akpabio, Ono, Amechi, Ademu, Ikeazo, others as ministers. To continue today, details of that on page 6. That's, of course, enjoys an earpiece just beside the nameplate. But let's look at other trending stories. Down below the picture story there, alleged graft Okorocha in trouble. The details of that story is on page 40, but the writers here say EFCC seals university, schools, estates linked to ex-Imo governor family. And the other writer says it's handwork of PDP, ex-governor, that's ex-Imo governor. And then the last writer says, count us out. That's coming from the, of course, governor of Imo State, Emeka Ihedioha. And we'll consolidate on our successes coming from President Buhari. You can read it up. Details of that is on page 12. And stolen 400 million naira, GOC finance officer to face court-martial, investigation ongoing, Army. Details of that on page 4. And Kingsley, you've got other stories?
Well, they're still from the same newspaper. That's the Daily Sun newspaper, inside at page 12. Let me just take a few of the headlines. New CJN takes oath, wants Nigeria's judiciary to be best in the world. Out-of-school children hits 16 million. That's according to the ministerial nominee who was screened yesterday. And that's the immediate past minister of education, Adamu, saying that out-of-school children now 16 million. Federal government introduces new marriage certificate. I'll read that story. Let me take a few paragraphs on that story. Federal government is at page 12 of the Daily Sun. The federal government, according to the story, has introduced a new federal marriage certificate for all types of marriages in the country. Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior, Georgina Ehuria, disclosed at a stakeholders conference on the conduct of statutory marriage in Abuja yesterday. She said existing couples who did not have their certificate issued by the Ministry of Interior were advised to visit the ministry's website to recertify their marriage certificates. Mrs. Ehuria, who explained that not all places of worship were permitted to conduct marriages, advised Nigerians to ensure that their marriages were conducted in places licensed by the Ministry of Interior. This is for the marriage to be credible and registered in the national database of legally certified marriages. If the certificate is not printed and delivered by the principal registrar of marriages, then it is illegal and cannot serve the desired purpose. She said arrangements were ongoing for couples whose certificates were not issued in line with the Marriage Act of the opportunity to bring them to conformity. On the benefits of the certificates, she said it will be recognized by all foreign embassies during visa application.
I wonder why Kingsley is taking it.
Well, it's useful to read that story because...
Yes, this alarm now, you need to regularize your marriage if it is not in conformity with that law.
Is there a time frame?
Well, the story doesn't say a time frame. I think that there are more questions being raised by the statement attributed to the permanent secretary. More questions being raised. And in a sense, what we have is misleading. It's misleading. What is the impression that is being created? For instance, that a marriage contracted under native law and custom is invalid? Well, the reference
it's not invalidated by the ministry?
The reference here is to Marriage Act. There's also, as the Matrimonial Causes Act, been rendered invalid as well. So I don't know. It's a lot of confusion that's coming up. And the purpose of having a marriage certificate is not necessarily for you to go and apply for a visa. That is secondary. It is the needless emphasis that Nigerians are placing on visa applications that you will say that one of the benefits is for you to show that your marriage is valid. If you don't want to travel abroad, you don't need a visa. And there are millions of Nigerians.
It's because we are often too outer-directed.
Absolutely.
We want to have our holidays abroad, so it becomes a status conferring if you go abroad.
If you are an employee in any organization and your status is required, your status is required for any particular purpose, the evidence of your status will be your marriage certificate.
Yes.
Not because you want to travel abroad to go and get a visa. The critical questions I've asked, are you saying that marriages contracted under native law and custom should not also be under Marriage Act?
Those are the questions that the ministry will have to answer. But meanwhile, yesterday, 10 of the 43 ministerial nominees were screened. 3 former senators and 1 member of the National Assembly were accorded the courtesy to take a bow, and on the assumption that they will represent the National Assembly very well. The only female among them was also accorded that courtesy to take a bow. Before the screening, however, Senator Philip Aduda protested the non-inclusion of nominee of the FCT. Senator Dinlo Melai also lended a voice, said it is a constitutional requirement. The Senate President Ahmed Lawan has said that this is an executive function and the executive will take appropriate action. Meanwhile, a nominee from Imo, who is a member of the House of Representatives, yesterday jumped ship from the Accord Party. At plenary yesterday, he presented a letter notifying the 9th Assembly of his defection to the All Progressive Congress. He was actually elected into the National Assembly on the platform of Accord Party. He was previously a member of the House on the APC. Nigeria has the 18th Chief Justice of the nation. He is Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed. He was sworn in as the 18th Chief Justice by President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday. He said, "I will want to see Nigeria judiciary as the best in the world." We are still learning, but I am proud to say that Nigeria judiciary, I'm sure, is one of the best in Africa. And he threw a challenge to journalists. He said, "I will ask you people and other persons who know about corruption to please write to me." But I sounded a note of caution. Don't just make hollow allegations. Be sure you are quite in possession of your facts. The Chief Justice became acting Chief Justice in January.
Just before you move on, yesterday, the bit I watched of the screening, there was a little drama, when the former Minister of Transportation was being screened. I think someone raised, a point of order, that members of State House of Assembly do not, the privilege extended to senators and all that, does not apply to, members.
Of the State House of Assembly.
Exactly.
Okay. He used to be a Speaker of Rivers State House of Assembly.
Yes, but the way, the maturity displayed by the President of the Senate, was really commendable. And it was quite dramatic, really. I don't know if Kingsley watched that.
I didn't see that aspect of it. I mean, it was a long, drawn process. I had other things that took my time. Part of what I saw, of course, had to do with the interaction between Godswill Akpabio and Abaribe, Senator Abaribe, over whether or not to screen. But, I mean, when Rotimi Amechi was nominated in 2015, he was screened. It was screened, and it was a long, drawn-out process. I mean, there were all kinds of, if you like, hostile questions that were thrown at him on that occasion. And there was also a member of the House of Representatives who was, asked questions, and so it's there's nothing unusual about it. I mean, I'm sure when our guests come in this morning, they would raise the question whether, they will answer the question whether it's necessary to continue with this tradition of take a bow and go. Take a bow and go doesn't address any point.
And whether that should also extend to, members of the State House of Assembly.
If it extends, you better clear everybody and then let them just...
It is the prerogative of the Senate.
That's right.
Simple.
Good point.
Yes. The community policing became a subject of concern. The Vice President was giving clarification on it, and he said the community policing will be adopted to deal with the incessant crime across the country. He spoke at Osogbo after he has held a meeting with traditional rulers. He said that the Inspector General of Police have been talking about recruiting police locally from their local government, those who understand the environment, the language, and the culture of the people. The governor of Osun State, Boyega Oyetola, also identified conspiracy and movement of criminals across borders, particularly elements who are coming to mining sites in Osun State for increased crime in the area. It may be also recalled that the Inspector General of Police, while briefing traditional rulers meeting at Kaduna, indicated that community policing model is one that will involve the establishment and utilization of special constables. It is a model mirrored after the police communities support officer standard in the United Kingdom police architecture. The special constables are to be drawn from members of the community to serve as voluntary community police officers. And there's even a proposal that members who are benefiting from the government program, the N-Power program, will be members that could be incorporated into the community
the N-Power,
policy.
there is a story here also on page 12 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Story on page 12 says federal government sacks 2,525 N-Power beneficiaries and 18,674 resign.
Yes, the N-Power program was supposed to be a temporary thing. Those who were said to have resigned are said to have gained employment elsewhere, so there was no need for them to continue to be on the program. But those that have been sacked are those who have not been faithful to their commitment to the N-Power program. There's this story about the National Youth Service Corps. Former head of state whose administration initiated NYSC has now suggested that they should be extended to West African sub-region. He was represented by the first Director General of the NYSC, Colonel Amadou Ali, Dr. Amadou Ali now, who said that the West African countries prefer to have Nigerian corps members in preference for the voluntary ones that come from the Peace Corps from the United States. The Director General says it's a good idea, but it will require amendment of the NYSC Act.
Okay.
How is that going to work? How that we send Nigerian corps members to West African countries? Nigeria already has a technical aid corps.
Yes.
Which is under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Yes.
And there are questions also about our exporting our manpower, because a good number of those who participate in the technical aid corps scheme hardly ever return to Nigeria. So is Nigeria going to fund the activities of the year-long NYSC course scheme for West African countries?
There have been instances where the Chief Justice of some West African countries have been Nigerian. We've been giving that support for over a long time. Gambia and other countries.
Yeah, we are, but we have to ask ourselves, if we are complaining that we don't have enough teachers, in rural areas, we don't have enough medical personnel, we don't have enough other professionals for our activities in Nigeria, why are we going to attempt, I mean, assuming this says through, to bear the burden of sending youth corps members to ECOWAS countries, which satisfy our own purposes? Already there is a technical aid course scheme, and those, of course, are for graduates and professionals who are already working. That's what I think, Bayo.
It's an idea.
Well,
let's see how it works.
The ECOWAS scheme, it's a treaty.
Yes.
And there are, of course, the protocols. So if this is going to happen, would it mean, kind of reviewing, the protocol, amending the protocol?
Well, incidentally, General Yakubu Gowon and late Eyadema were the proponents of the ECOWAS West African community itself. And so this idea is coming from him again. Let's explore it and let's see how it will work. If it doesn't work, like Kingsley has pointed out, we are crying in need of teachers. And if you remember, there was a time the NYSC included graduates of the NCE. The whole idea was that it was to provide teachers for the UPE scheme that started in 1976. So if presently as it is, some states already have a policy that members of the National Youth Service Corps, when they are posted to their state, will be deployed to fill the void of lack of teachers in their schools. So if you will be exporting that, that is the danger that Kingsley is pointing out.
There are even, there are calls, strong calls for a review of the ECOWAS protocol, in line with, the dynamic needs of each member state. Yes, but let's quickly look at the editorial, the Daily Sun editorial.
Yes.
Funny enough, is on Nigeria and AFCON 2019. Of course, it's a topic which was treated on Good Morning Nigeria. I think it was on Tuesday.
Yes.
Kingsley, I wasn't here.
Correct,
it was on
Tuesday.
Yeah, but the key points of this editorial, let me just give it to you. First of all, it's talking about, of course, the essence of football, that football has become an arena where nations, of course, display their strengths, and that, of course, no country wants to be left behind, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. That's, of course, no one wants to be left behind. So it said this explains why Nigeria fought hard to finish third, for the 8th time. And it is better than not winning any medal. Of course, Nigerians expected the Super Eagles to win the trophy, which it won in 1980, 1994, and 2013. Now, the second point to note from the editorial is that now that the AFCON is over, the next one is holding in Cameroon. Nigeria is already drawn in Group L with Lesotho, Sierra Leone, and Benin. Of course, it is time to work ahead. And commendation, of course, to the winners. Bayo.
Yes, the editorial explains our contribution or our participation in AFCON, the 32nd African Cup of Nations. And it says that the time to prepare for the next one in Cameroon in 2021 is now. However, the editorial actually x-rayed our performance. It said that in the area of goalkeeping department, there's still a lot of work to be done. It's also identified in the area of the defense that work must be done, because we have instances where we considered 2 own goals from our defenders. And that is a big challenge that they think has to be addressed. They said there is need for creative midfield players to ensure that Nigeria can have midfielders that will feed our attackers. But most importantly, he said that the next tournament, the one that just ended in Egypt, is the first time we're having 24 teams. Before, it had been heated to 16 teams. And there's a possibility, a proposal on the line, that they might increase from 24 to 48. And if that is the case, the alarm now is that there are no longer minions in the African football. If you have teams like Rwanda, Benin Republic, Tanzania, who had the opportunity of the expansion to 24 teams having their debut, and Rwanda was able to beat Nigeria, it means that we all need to buckle up to ensure that if we want to continue
it was Madagascar that shocked Nigeria.
Nigeria, yes, 2-0.
But let's manage the 24 team format we have. It's just the first time. Why are you rushing to? Why would you be rushing to 48? How many countries? Then there will be no preliminaries. They just everybody come, and then will you then have these stadia facilities to accommodate 48 teams. I mean, the logistics will be a nightmare, Bayo. All right. Well, we'll just see how things go. And we'd like to thank you for being around. See you again tomorrow. Thank you. It's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll go ahead with our item for discussion this morning.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria. It's happening live here on Africa's largest TV network. That's the NTA. Today, our focus will be on the ministerial nominees. I want to look at capacities and tasks ahead and, of course, set the tone for our conversation this morning. Our correspondent, Victor Azo, spoke with some Nigerians on the streets, of course, here in the capital city, concerning their expectations from these next-level ministers.
Minister of Agriculture is expected to drive the agricultural policies of the government, especially the Buhari government that is emphasizing on creating another source of revenue to the government apart from oil.
The power section is very, very essential because you can see today most of the things that they used to want to produce, if they don't have power, they can't do it. So if the power will stand in Nigeria, I think it's going to be very, very good to Nigerians.
It is very, very important that we are expected those ministers to work, especially roads, especially transports, especially maritime, especially powers, and the youth employment.
That's the agricultural field, science and technology, information, modern technologies.
I advise government to look into textile industry so that they can improve more and so Nigeria will be better.
All right, thank you very much, Victor Azu, for the Vox Pop there, for expressing the views of Nigerians on the ministerial nominees and the task ahead. We have our regular guests with us here in the studios as well as at our Benin Network Center. Once we are through with the connections, we'll go over to Benin. But right here with us in the Abuja studios, we'd like to welcome Dr. Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu, who is the public affairs commentator.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you with us on the program.
So good morning,
also here with us, another very familiar face, as I said, Jide Ojo. Jide Ojo, delighted to have you with us on the program this morning.
My pleasure, sir.
Okay.
Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. We're not sure if Benin is clear. If Benin is through now, we're supposed to be going over to our Benin Network Center. But in the absence of that, we might as well begin the conversation with the guests who are here with us in the studios. First, Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu. What is your initial thought, as it were, with regard to the unveiling of the ministerial list?
Well, I was expecting some ministers to return if the first appointment by Mr. President is any guide, because there were some of his aides that were reappointed, though it was personal, and the CBN governor's appointment was renewed. And then we know that there are some ministers that will definitely return. But again, I'm not disappointed with the kind of persons I found on the list. Because of the nature of the kind of politics we play in this country, that you have so many interests to take care of. And yeah, that is what I see reflecting on that list.
Jide?
Well, it is the prerogative of Mr. President to appoint whoever he wants to work with. And he said he wants to work with people he's very familiar with. And Section 147 from Section 1 to 5 of the Constitution actually gave him some parameters of what he needs to take into consideration: indigenship, partisanship, and it's observed that just that I would have loved the list to have been earlier, so that governance can start in earnest. We do not need 55 days for that list to come out. But I know, like Amisu said, various political interests to consider. The women community are shouting, the youth wants reflection, the old doesn't want to be left out. So, balancing of interests that, and I would say it's a compensation list. And I'm not saying that sarcastically. If people work for you, you need to compensate them. While some of us are in the studios are doing armchair criticism, some people spend their resources, some spend their time to go around the country to mobilize support for him. And he needs to take care of them. And possibly that's why we saw the increase from 36 of 2015 to 43. Because then this is his second and final term. If he doesn't do that now, a lot of people, you know, the argument, even from his wife in 2015, was that the majority of people he found on his cabinet are people who never worked for him. And he said he never knew many of the people that he worked with in 2015. So in 2019, he has tried to see that at least as many as possible, those who worked for him. We run pork barrel politics in Nigeria, just like in many other advanced countries. So I think for that reason, and in their own respects, the very eminently qualified Nigerians.
Okay, let me put you on hold. You've said very eminently qualified Nigerians, but yet this is a compensation list. Hamisu, if you look at the competencies, if you look at the areas of specialization, you know, of the team, we have 12 returning ministers, and we have about 32, you know, or 31 new ones. What do you think was the thinking of Mr. President? He has an agenda to deliver.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see, I think if I can read the mind of Mr. President, he believes that any human being given any task can deliver. So irrespective of whether you are an accountant or you are a professional footballer or what, the most important thing is the mind. What does the mind wants to do? Is to deliver result. Do you have the men and resources? Do you have the managerial skills? These are generic skills that cut across the jargons that we use in our own daily field. So the mind is the most important thing in terms of governance. And then by time, and that is why you see a professional, a trained agricultural scientist may fail woefully as agricultural minister. And you find somebody who is an engineer manning the same place, at least pulling through and performing better. The difference between a professional that is performing is that the person knows the field. Apart from that, again, that the person is a result-oriented person. So once you set your mind to work, you're going to get the result. So now governance is simple, but people think it's complex because of what it takes to achieve a result. Now, between bringing resources and the human capital together, there is always one element, which is either the interest of the public is taken care of or the personal interest of those that are charged with the resources to work for the people. And if the latter is the case, you find out that no matter the amount of billion you're going to channel into a problem, the result will not be solved. So if the will is there to really subjugate our own personal interests under the public and general interest of the people, you will see public utilities, you will see results, you will see a lot of things that you want to see. But in a situation whereby the generality of the people, including the leadership, for instance, the ministers are going to give directives, they are going to guide. They are not even the technocrats within the ministry. They have the technocrats in all the departments. All they need to do is to sit, listen to them, what resources do we have, what are the goals we want to achieve, who are the competent persons within the ministries that can do it, what are the policies. You listen around the table, and then you aggregate whatever input they have professionally, and you give them that directive, and then you go further to monitor and evaluate. So what has been lacking is not the quality or the paper qualification of those that have been manning our public offices. It has to do with the staff and the system. So if you have a system that does not encourage people to deliver results, nobody is saying anything. If you do fine, fine. If you don't do fine, you go scot-free, or you are rewarded for underperforming. So underperformance becomes a benchmark for everybody, because even if you perform, nobody was going to praise you. But the way it is presently in Nigeria, there are a lot of challenges. People are yearning for a result. They want to see things done quickly. So we don't have the luxury of time that somebody will come and learn for 2 years.
All right, Abdurrahman, thank you. I wanted to have an idea of the president's thinking through you.
Yeah.
But you of course, giving us your point. We understand that we have, of course, Mr. Konzwa Osaro, who is a public affairs analyst with us now from our Benin Network Center. Thank you, Mr. Osaro, for joining us. I'm sure you must have heard of Hamisu and Jide's earlier comment on the composition of the ministerial nominees. What's your thinking? What do you think was going on in the mind of Mr. President when he constituted this list?
The basic thing is that he's actually adhered to the constitutional requirement that every state must have at least a minister, and 7 states are luckier having 2. So that's the basic thing. In democracy, you expect every player to adhere to the law and the constitution in this instance. So the composition is in compliance with that. That is the thing I can say. So we have to commend the president for being a Democrat in that regard. So we also congratulate those who have been nominated to be screened by the National Assembly, particularly the Senate. And we do hope, as soon as they are assigned their portfolios, they will be attuned to the needs of the country and they would actually hit the ground running to make sure our conditions improve.
Well, Dr. Okunzua, we'll come to you shortly, but let me return to Jide Ojo. Still talking about the number. We have seen now an addition of 7. And part of what the presidency said in 2015 was there was a need to reduce the cost of governance. And so we saw a mega ministry, Power, Works and Housing, and the merger of Information and Culture and a couple of other ministries that were then streamlined. But if you're now having 43 ministers, what does that tell us about the likely cost of governance? Does it reflect the fact that perhaps the economy is now more buoyant and so can absorb the shock of unbundling some of these ministries and then having 7 additional ministers, because all of the ministers are said to be equal?
Yeah, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than the other. I think that's why I said it was a compensation list. There are so many people who work for the re-election of Mr. President, and he just trying to make sure that at least he pleased as many as he could constitutionally. But reducing the cost of governance, in true sense, it's not so much the number of ministries you have that increase the cost of governance. It's what you do with your budget. Yeah, okay. As you have the Minister of Works, Housing, and Power, you have to, no member of staff was retrenched. So you kept all the staff. Peradventure, maybe you didn't need as many palm secs or, but we were just being penny-wise, pound-foolish. In the real sense of the word, what increased the cost of governance is not so much the number of ministries. It's what the system permits you to do with your resources. For instance, each of the chief executives buys new cars. They have all sorts of aids. Sometimes you have as many as 20 security details. Do you need all of that? Do you need... I think for me, it's high time we start placing constitutional limits on the number of aids you should have, on the number of security details, to reflect the general needs of the public. You know, there was a time that we were clamoring that all the security details of politically exposed person should be recalled. And the former IG did that, but within a week, he reversed himself. Why? And we said we are under-policed. So at the end of the day, we saw the efficiency units in the federal ministries, but much as you are saying people should not fly first class, they should not go on needless travels, these bureaucrats find a creative way to still make sure that they do the same thing, using different guys to make sure that the money still comes to them. So I think it's all about fine-tuning the system to make sure that resources are, that are deployed. I do not see why a minister, for instance, should have more than 2 vehicles. Maybe one official vehicle and one spare in the event that one, but you don't find that kind of austere life with public officers. In UK, we know that the Prime Minister of UK flies British Airways. He does not have an official plane. In US, we have Air Force One and maybe Air Force Two to carry the President of US about. But in Nigeria, we do have at least 6 airplanes in the presidential fleet. It used to be 11. It was this administration that even gave some to Air Force, sold off about 2. So if you want to reduce the cost of governance, there are so many areas you can shed with, rather, because the irony of having a super ministry is that you create bad blood. I made a joke earlier about all animals are equal, but some are more equal than the other. Do you know that those who will be made minister of state will not be happy? Because they are representing a state. And when you look at the face of that happened between the president as Minister of Petroleum Resources and Ibe Kachiko as Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, and the way Mekanti Baru related with the president at the expense of his supervising minister, so to speak, over the issue of contract that Ibe Kachiko complained in an open letter. We find out that Mekanti Baru said, look, the law setting up NNPC did not recognize Minister of State. So I'm supposed to relate with the Minister of Petroleum Resources. And who is the Prime Minister? Is the President. So you will see that some states will say, oh, why is he giving us Minister of State? Because like Foreign Affairs now, we have 1 substantive minister and 2 Minister of States. And some other. So where you have people now being posted as Minister of State, it makes them look at, so am I inferior? Did my state not vote for Mr. President? So at least when you demerge, you will not offend as many sensibilities as you have.
Okay, Kingsley, I know you want to ask Hamisu, but just before we let's bring in Dr. Saworo to also look at this. Dr. Saworo, Jide has, of course, spoken, but again, I'm wondering what she will adduce, to be the reason for the additional 7, nominees, of course, in the new cabinet.
To emphasize some factors that may not be known to us, some of these states actually, like Lagos, Kano, for instance, you have population density, population size is above the national average. In fact, Lagos is the most populous in the south, and Kano is the most populous in the north. So maybe that was recognized, and that is respecting the canon of representativeness. It is true that all states are presumed equal, but you must find some other rules that are not forbidden outright to recognize states that have more population than others. So a state like Lagos, for instance, can ordinarily have 1 minister, and let me not mention any other state, maybe a state down here in the south will also have just 1 minister. I don't think that is ordinarily equitable. So it may have been a technique of balancing a lot of things up, and like my home state, Edo, we are not just about, the only state in the south-south that is APC, the only state, south-south and southeast combined. So that will also need some kind of recognition. It means Edo State has stuck its net out, supporting the APC for the past 12 years or so. So having 2 ministers from Edo State is a kind of compensation. So factors of that kind, patronage, recognition of equity, representativeness, and so on. And just like Jide was saying, really, a government or public affairs generally cannot be equated to any business proposition. Nigeria is not a business. It's not a business to be run on profit and loss basis. Nigeria is to be run to the satisfaction of all citizens. So whatever can be done to make that possible, for as long as the resources are there, to make everybody have a sense of belonging, will be superior to saving a few there and kobo here and there.
Well, Dr. Sawaro, just before we come to Abu Rahman, I posed the question to Jide, and of course, in his response, he elaborated on it. Does the fact that we are now having an enlarged cabinet, of course, that will be constituted, reflect perhaps that the economy is now more buoyant to absorb all of this? Because obviously, even from his own response, there are cost centers to be met once you have additional numbers in terms of your ministers?
Not necessarily so, and it doesn't have to be so, really. That's precisely what I was trying to say a while ago, that to run a nation is not like running a business. There are two different propositions. The Constitution has a stipulation, for instance, that every state must have a minister. Indeed, that is actually what made our presidential system attractive over the parliamentary system we were operating in the First Republic. That the constituency, the whole country, as vast as it is the constituency of the president. And he must have a person who will be on his cabinet from there to also represent his own state at that level. So it's not about whether the economy is buoyant or not. It's about giving every person a place at the table. So in this distance, don't also forget too that we have 6 geopolitical regions in the country. It's like that structure is also being increasingly recognized. Even in the previous government, the geopolitical regions also had representation. So in this instance, it's also happened, though one extra. It would have been 42, but it's 43. But I think that additional one is negligible. So it's not about whether the economy is running well or not. That is important. That is important. But Nigeria should be run as a modern nation state. Equity and such kindred values that will make the allegiance of Nigerians to Nigeria as a state to be solid. We must invest in it. Justice, equity, harmony, integration, just name it. All the values that will make a modern nation thrive, work well for its citizens. We must invest in all that without counting the cost, especially where we can afford it.
All right, Dr. Sawari, thank you very much. Abdurrahman Hamisu, what is your perspective on this issue with regard to the numbers that we are going to be dealing with, that's 43, versus what we had in the past? And whether it's, well, of course, there's a constitutional imperative of you picking one from each state of the Federation.
Yes. I think my view would be that we have a lot of challenges to tackle. And this government has spent, say, 4 years, after which the mandate was renewed. Though I would have loved the president should tell us why he did what he did. Since he has not done that, we'll be left with speculating. But again, for me, if you ask me, the 3 ministries that were merged together, works, power, and housing, these are critical infrastructure that Nigerians are really clamoring for. We want to have power, we want to have road infrastructure, we want to have decent housing, and so on and so forth. So if you pick, for instance, housing alone is a challenge on its own. If you pick power, that is the core we're talking about today. It's a challenge on its own. So when you saddle one person with the responsibility of providing power, or providing, say, infrastructure that has to do with roads, and then you saddle the same person with housing, it means the person, if the person does not have the health capacity to carry the burden, the person will be sent to his grave. With due respect to the person that has occupied that office, because the challenges are enormous. These are critical infrastructure that are the foundation of a modern economy. So for me, I would have loved to see unbundling of such a ministry. The issue of Minister of State, that is secondary to me. I would have loved to see efficiency. Okay, we've learned lessons. We've done this for 4 years. We realized that, okay, the 3 ministries that were put together was so big that we are thinking we need to unbundle it for efficiency, for speedy delivery of whatever next level programs that we have. That would have made sense to me. In addition to fair representation, the task is of paramount importance to me than saying it's a compensation. Once you take it from the angle of compensation, then it means that the issue of the economy will come in. So it means you are just bringing people in to come and get what they can get from the system, not the job that they're supposed to do. And I bet you, even in the next 20 years, the economy will not be buoyant enough. Because no matter what we're doing now, if you look at our earnings and the challenges before us, you come to realize that our gross national earnings is less than the challenges we need to confront in terms of Naira and Kobo. So if we now said the economy is buoyant, I bet you the economy is not buoyant. But what we need to do is to make the economy buoyant. And that is why I said the job that needs to be done. So if it is on that basis that, okay, the number of the ministers have been increased, it makes a lot of economic sense to me, and it shows prudent management, and it shows that, okay, this government has learned lessons from whatever has happened in the previous 4 years, and that the increment is part of the next level agenda because they need more ends in order to fast-track delivery of infrastructure, good education, good medical facilities, and so on and so forth. But if you take it from fairness and equity, because that is what has been cheating us in this country, we make it look as if, okay, because you participated, you must come and eat. But what we're saying is governance is not about come and eat. You need to create a sustainable economy that will be able to secure you, will be able to pay your bill, so that you can even move around freely to any joint to even buy fresh ginger juice to drink. But if the economy is such that we reward people simply because you supported somebody to win election, so what we are saying is we will not be expecting much in this remaining 4 years because the entire thing will be who has gotten what. And then the infighting that we will see as we roll on will be very vicious because the interest and attraction for most of the persons will be, how do I get Jide out of his seat so that I take over? Instead of, how do I partner with Jide so that we can succeed to deliver infrastructure, to deliver security, to deliver employment, and then make the economy very buoyant. So for God's sake, we're talking about diversification. We're talking about infrastructure. So without a buoyant economy, without people that will come and work to reposition the economy so that we can earn more from diverse sources. And then this more that we are earning cannot translate to infrastructure, cannot translate to security, then it means the next level is lost from the very beginning.
Okay, Jide, let me shift the goalpost a bit and look at those sectors that are probably the critical drivers, or that will be the drivers of the next level package. And also look at the returning ministers. Most of the returning ministers, of course, manned, those sectors. If you look at power, for instance, power, transport, finance, judiciary, aviation, we have the former ministers returning. Lai Mohammed, of course, information. Amechi is there. Fashola is there. Zainab is there. We have Hadi Sarika is also there. Do you think in bringing back these, former ministers, was it strategic for the president?
Again, not being a Nostradamus and not being clairvoyant, I believe during inauguration we'll get to know the mindset of the president in doing what he did. But we can only speculate that peradventure, having realized, if you are doing the same thing the same way, you can't expect a different result. It's going to be the same result. I believe first he must have assessed those statistics and saw the capacity gap. And maybe he realized he was mistaken with the merger that he did. For me, there is no two way about it. He cannot keep the 25 structure as we have it in 2015 and have 43 people manage. It's going to create a lot of infighting. Because when you see ministries that have more than one minister, there is always this face-off, Cold War in between them. So the most important thing is, I believe, one, in those people he returned, he sees in them capacity, efficiency, integrity. Because he has said, don't forget, Mr. President said, I'm going to work with people who are not only loyal, but are people who can deliver, who are also people of integrity. So he has his core values that he has mapped out. And he possibly saw it in these 12 people. And we may say what we like. The buck stops at the president's table. He knows it. He knows what pressure. He said to us last week that he's under intense pressure. So you don't know the kind of pressure he's having. Is it pressure to deliver on good governance or pressure for political patronage or a combination of both? So the point I'm trying to make is these people are good in their own right. But I think for me, it's about the system. Can the system allow you to work? Does the system support good governance? Do we need to refine and fine-tune and reform the system for better efficiency? Because you look at the resume of each of these people, both the returning and the outgoing and the new ones. They are all very fantastic in their previous, call to duty. Those who are from private sector, those who are from public sector, who have been former governors. But when you come, Amisu said something earlier. You are a guide. You are a supervisor. The core of implementers are just under you. And they can run rings around you, irrespective of how good you are. Look at the frustration of Fashola, for instance, in the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing. He is constantly in face-off with discourse. Do you realize? So if the stumbling blocks are not removed, even with your own integrity, with your own core values and all of that, you may still be able not to. And of course, there is also the angle of budgeting. You have so much to do. You have a very good blueprint and roadmap, but the money is not there for you to perform. Because our budget, I think we are having a 2 trillion deficit budget. So if there is no loan to fund that gap, no matter your intendment, you may not be able to deliver. So there is a lot that goes into delivery on your mandate.
If we're to evaluate, previous performance of the returning ministers, do we have a sense of why, they are coming back and what they are, the capacity to, deliver on their previous, results?
I believe a couple of them may not return to their former ministries. Okay. I think the president may possibly have looked at, okay, maybe this guy will do better elsewhere. But loyalty counts, integrity counts, qualification, academic qualification counts, experience counts. So when you bring all of this into the mix, you look at the vision you have for the country. How do I want to deliver on this vision? Who can help me deliver on this vision? We should not also forget the local politics. Every politics is local. Those who did not make it, it's not because they have offended the president, but the support base may no longer be there for them to return. Some have lost out in the 2019 election. The face-off ahead of primaries and all of those things may have come to be the stumbling blocks or their nemesis. Some have been fighting with their governors. We know of a couple of ministers who never see eye to eye with their governors, who took their governors to cleaners. You don't expect such governors to support their return. But beyond and above that is, like I said, is the system. How much support you get from the system, and what is even the thinking of the president. I tell you something. At the inauguration of these ministers, you may be surprised at some of the pronouncements that the president will come up with. He may be having something up his sleeves that he was going to unravel at that, because I know that there is likelihood of a demerging of some of the ministries. There may be creation of additional one. And the only ministry that is expressly mentioned in the Constitution is the Ministry of Justice, Office of Attorney General, Minister of Justice. That's the only one that is expressed. You can create any other one. Even you can create Ministry of Happiness, as Governor Rocha Sokorocha did in Imo State. So I think a lot, it depends on the mindset of the president, but we can only hazard guesses, and these are my guesses.
You create Minister of Happiness, and then the EFCC will come later too.
I don't know about that.
No, well, it's in the public domain, by the way. I mean, all kinds of photographs. Jide Ojo, thanks a lot. Well, let's go over very quickly to Dr. Kunzu Asawar again, our Benin Network Center. Well, in terms of just trying to read the mind of the president and looking at the constellation of the returnee nominees and the fresh nominees, isn't there a sense in which, look, the president is communicating that this is continuity for me? And those who have occupied some of these ministries, very significant ministries in the past, why move them away to go and start learning the ropes elsewhere, unless, of course, you find that something went wrong? The president is not bringing anything new to the table. He says, look, this is my agenda. The label, next level, is a label. He says, I'm continuing from what I stopped, from what I began with in 2015. So those who are coming with me to this next step, which he said is next level, must be persons who have the same vision, who have the same, capacity, if you like, as well as integrity credits. What is your reaction?
Contribution can be safely made that the president is coming down on the side of continuity. And there's a lot to be said for that. Because some of the programs have a very long gestation period. It is true that democracy sets term limits for most regimes and all of that. So the first term of 4 years may not have been enough. As a matter of fact, that's why the president himself sought re-election for a second term. In the critical area of development like electricity or power, you may find that some plans are already afoot, but 4 years wouldn't have been enough to bring them to fruition. So another 4 years. So if the minister that was there before is returning, and particularly is going to be returned to that same portfolio, he will have an additional time, of course, drawing upon his experience the past 4 years to fine-tune a few things and all. So what is important at the end of the day, whichever ministry is going to be assigned to any person, is the welfare of Nigerians is put right at the middle of things. That will be the central focus of whatever is taking place. So consolidation, continuity, they are valuable because very often it takes quite a lot of time, as I've said before, gestation period, for newfangled ideas or new personnel to even climb the learning curve. So a person who's ever been a minister before, if he's just appointed, he will need to learn the ropes. How does he relate with his permanent secretary? How does he relate with the bureaucracy of his ministry? And so on. So a person who was minister in the last 4 years wouldn't have to learn that. So he's probably going to know the first directive he's going to issue, the day he's going to resume duty, and so on and so forth. So a lot to be said for consolidation, for continuity, for as long as they favor Nigerians and their welfare is pursued and enhanced.
Abdurrahman Hamisu?
Yeah, I was fortunate to be part of a team that evaluated the change agenda earlier this year, around February, under the office of the president, SSA, to the president on policy development and analysis. And the theme of that very particular program was interrogating the change agenda. What has changed? What are the lessons learned? And then how are they going to move forward? And the critical findings were centered around infrastructure, for instance, roads, taking it from the economic recovery and growth plan. If you pick that document, you come to realize that it is a diagnostic analysis of the vulnerabilities that need to be overcome if Nigeria will have to build an emerging economy that will compete and then cater for the welfare of the people. So there is a close linkage between, first, what the economy is generating, secondly, issues around security, thirdly, economic diversification, and then the school feeding program, which is the social investment program. In all of this, if the nation is not generating wealth, you will not be able to implement good policies. And the plans were there, as you rightly mentioned, there were plans that showed clearly there is a roadmap. So if the president is returning, for instance, 12 ministers, it may be that, okay, these 12 ministers, as far as I'm concerned, I'm comfortable with them, that even if they're not returning to their previous ministries, they've already done a work plan, a roadmap that any person that desires to deliver, by the time you are posted there, all you need to do is just to get the expert around, get yourself acquainted with it, and run with it. And then I could use them to do the same thing in another ministry, or that I'm sending them back. If you are sending them back, for instance, if you are sending Fashola back to, say, Ministry of Works, you are not expecting him to start asking how many roads were constructed in the southwest or in the southeast or in the north. He already have them on his fingertips. So one of the things you give to Mr. President, whether we like it or not, and where we're having this wrong in Nigeria is because, well, we're all guided by interest. There are persons that, no matter the kind of person you are going to give appointment, if the person is not close to him or her because of contract or patronage, it means the president has not done anything. So, but if we're taking it from what needs to be done, that want to reposition our country, and that we need people that have those competencies, even in normal situation, in the exam settings, there are people that will pass, there are people that will fail, there are those that will be promoted, there are those that will be asked to repeat. So these 12 persons, whether you like it or not, most of them we know what they've done. The people that are coming in, we're expecting that by the time they come, and this is one thing that is lacking in this country, I expected that as soon as these new ministers come in, there should be a sort of retreat where they are acquainted with what they need to do. If you pick the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, it's a wonderful document. What is required is for everybody to commit and domesticate it in their various ministries so that it can feed into the overall development trajectory that has been painted, which is the next level agenda that we are talking about. So for me, the president has shown that clearly. When he came in, there were projects that were started by PDP, right? The president did not say because it was not my party that initiated it, I was not going to complete them. And that led to the argument that, okay, even on Facebook, social media, the partisans of the two political parties, this one will say, name any project that has been initiated and completed by APC, because they'll be completing the ones we've started. But it is to the eternal benefit of Nigerians and those that are doing business in Nigeria. So those are the kind of continuity we want to see. Not rewarding boys for rewarding sake. Not bringing people to come and get what they need to get from the system, but bringing people in to come and contribute their own quota. So if you fail your people. Unfortunately, we don't even rank, we use state to appoint. We don't use state to rank the performance of our ministers. So I think we should start doing that so that we know if we are bringing somebody from, say, Niger State, we know that you must bring a competent person, not somebody that will swell the name of Niger State or any other state for that matter. So for me, competence matters. The job that needed to be done is another thing again. And then above all, continuity, consolidation, as my friend rightly pointed out, is very critical.
Hamis will raise the point. I mean, this is, the guest can take it up after in the course of your question. He was talking about a retreat for ministers. I think it's been the practice over time that whenever you have a new cabinet, they go for a retreat, usually for 2 or 3 days, and you have all kinds of presentations. So that point needs to be clarified. My only concern was, there was a report that there's an ongoing presidential policy retreat at the villa. I've seen a number of party chieftains and governors and other stakeholders. I would have thought that that kind of policy, presidential policy retreat, would be advisable once you have your cabinet in place, so they can have the benefit of that. And then when you now retreat as a cabinet, you say, look, okay, what are the things that you work out? That's the point I thought I needed to make.
Precisely, Kingsley. Talking about continuity, I like Abdurrahman to also respond to this. Adamu is returning. He was Minister for Education. Jeffrey Onyema is returning. He was in Foreign Affairs. Ngige is also returning. He was in Labour. Now, if you consider the dramatic events, within those sectors, if you were Mr. President, would you do continuity or would you juggle?
Well, for me, Mr. Onyema, as far as I'm concerned, with what I've seen in terms of our foreign policy the direction and the fight against corruption and the collaborations and so on and so forth, attracting funding, say, to the Northeast in terms of fighting Boko Haram insurgency and then the IDPs, he has done pretty well. He has done pretty well. For me, again, with due respect, Mala Adamu did not impress me as a Minister of Education. Though he has his integrity, he's hardworking, he's committed, but maybe education was not the best ministry for him, or the reforms he has pioneered in that very particular ministry is yet to manifest. But as far as I'm concerned, with the little knowledge I have about the ministry, I wouldn't have said Mr. President should return him to Ministry of Education. Ngige, yeah, under him, there were issues around labor and strike upon strike and the rest of it. And he tried to manage it. Again, in terms of the quality of the things that I want to see, the changes I want to see, I did not really see them. Though he may have his integrity intact, he may have the competence to still work in the government, but probably Mr. President may decide to take him to another ministry.
Suppose we could tell you that, look, under me we had the new national minimum wage.
Where's the minimum wage?
Suppose it tells you that? I'm just wondering.
So for me, it's personal. This is my own take. This is my own opinion. They may have the competence. It may be that the ministry they were posted to did not afford them the environment to really put into practice what they needed to do, or that the changes they pioneer will take time to manifest. But as far as I'm concerned, these are my candid opinion on the three persons.
Jide?
I said earlier on that I don't expect all the 12 to return to their previous duty posts. I think there's a need to move them around. Ngige is a medical doctor. Maybe he will do well or do better in the Ministry of Health. Maybe Adamu being an accountant, would do well in Ministry of Finance or National Planning, you know. But I think it's premature for us to speculate that they are going to all to return to their various ministries. For instance, if there is a unbundling, as some people will say, unbundling of works, housing, and power, where do you...
And transport and aviation.
And transport, and where do you want to post Fashola? Is it power? Or is it what?
That's why we're having this conversation.
That's why we're
having this conversation. We're looking at responsibilities and tasks.
Yes,
you understand?
But you know, primarily Fashola is a lawyer. So if he's taken to office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice.
And indeed, some people are making such suggestions.
So it's not impossible.
Does he have the capacity and capability to?
As a senior advocate of Nigeria, oh my God, he should have.
There will be three senior advocates.
Yeah, I know there are three.
Festus Koyamo is also there.
I know, but you know, even in senior advocates, there is still hierarchy of. But I think for me, I can hazard a guess that Fashola will likely return to either works or power. Most likely, not housing, power or works, because I think his selection was based on his performance in Lagos. That he was a super governor in terms of infrastructure provision. So, again, you know, some people will tell you, it's not about what you study. Really, it's not. It's about how you can interpret the vision of the president and how you can key into it. And whatever the bureaucracy also supports you to achieve. Because sometimes there's what is called tragedy of good intentions. You may have very good intentions, but if you don't have the implementers who share the vision with you, they'll frustrate you. It will be dead on arrival. There are so many reforms that are initiated. Like, I expected somebody like Nelama to return, Okechukwu Elenama, because of the reforms he initiated in trade and investment. Unfortunately, we lost him. But
ease of doing business.
Ease of doing business, exactly. So, but again, it's about the prerogative of the president. You cannot force anybody on him. He said he wants people he knows, and he is willing. It's a risk-taking. But what I would advise the president, for me, advisory, that he should relieve himself of the role of Minister of Petroleum. That one is very key, so that he can superintend over these 43 people. To have a ministry to yourself, as well as being the president of Nigeria, may be too much for his age. It's an advisory. I'm not saying he should do that.
I will fail in my responsibility to the women if I don't talk about what the new women, 7 of them, what the capacity they bring, to bear in this new ministerial cabinet. But I hear we should take a short break now. We will come back to that. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Time for a break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and of course, we're looking at the tax ahead for the ministerial nominees. But first of all, we've got your tweets, so we'd like to take some of them just before we continue our conversation. Kingsley.
Olushola Onifade tweets, an excellent minister can turn around a seemingly inconsequential ministry to become the darling of the nation and get a standing ovation after 4 years.
And Festus Akiboyewa tweets, PMB has assembled an excitable team that's capable of moving our country to the next level of development. The temperature is rising across Nigeria in the area of unemployment, insecurity, and poverty. Therefore, the ministers must be ready to hit the ground running to calm this temperature.
Dele Jack Solomon, Nigeria has been without a cabinet, let's say the federal government, that's more appropriate. The federal government has been without a cabinet since the minister serving during the president's first term stepped down in May. The gap has led to a slowdown in investment and a near halt in decision-making. Now that we are about to have a new cabinet, I suggest that they hit the ground running after confirmation. No time to waste.
Dele Jack Solomon, what happened to the 35% affirmative action on political?
So we need people who are basically well educated, as I said before, whose minds are open, who are receptive to new ideas, and so on. Whatever technical expertise they will have in whatever area they eventually posted will just be an advantage, maybe a kind of icing in the cake.
All right. Dr. Osawara Okunzuwa, we'd like to thank you for being part of our discussion this morning. You joined us from our Benin Network Center. Then also here at the Abuja studios, Jide Ojo and Abdulrahman Abu Hamisu. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for being around. Just one point before we go over to our sports desk, Claire. There is a 7th member of the House of Representatives who is one of the ministerial nominees. He was screened yesterday. The rule is if he gets appointed as a minister, he loses his seat. So INEC will have to get ready to conduct a by-election for that federal constituency. Now, we had the experience in Obasanjo's first tenure when Senator Udo Udoma, who of course in the last dispensation was Minister of Budget and Planning, he was tapped as a minister, but he didn't then step forward to take his oath of office. So he returned to his seat. I think he was being offered a Minister of State at that time. He declined to accept it, so he returned to the Senate to take his seat. If he had been sworn in, then he would have lost his seat as a senator.